Hello, welcome to another edition of Talking Basketball Podcast. I am Mark.
I am Paul.
We've got another show today, haven't we?
Mark, we might have the greatest show of all time today with our guest.
Now, I feel a little embarrassed here because we have our guest today, but all I know is his first name. We stumbled through his last name. Paul butchered that a few times. And I know nothing about our guest. Paul's delighting and stitching me up on this one, so...
Yeah, this is a surprise.
Without
for you.
further ado, you take it away,
Okay.
sir.
All right, ready? I'll do my normal one. Ready? Yeah, now stand and cheer at number 99 for Plymouth City Patriots, Chris Trenerry. There you go.
Welcome, Chris.
Wow.
He's
All right,
still
fellas.
he's still looking blank. Shall I do another introduction, Mark?
I've got a feeling I know what the introduction
Here we
is.
go. Hang on, I'm going to do a new introduction. And now, stand and cheer for your Pat Riots.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Pat Riots is on the show, Mark.
Oh, that is very, very cool. Okay, you've outdone yourself. Well done, sir.
Chris, can I just call you Pat? Is that
You
okay?
you can call me whatever you want. So I guess what we should caveat that with is that I retired from being a basketball mascot in September. So yeah, after 27 years as a basketball mascot in both Division 1, the BBL, just timing was right. I'm sort of into my 40s now, and it just felt like the right time to just step away from basketball. But yeah, it's still a massive part of who I am, what I do, and here we are.
Well, what a career you've had. I don't know if you're aware of this, but most shows we talk about Pat Riots and how he is arguably one of the greatest all-time BBL mascots.
Oh,
And that
you.
goes down to you and the other guy for like the last 3 months.
Yeah, so the guy that's jumped in is a fantastic performer as well, and I think for me, part of the legacy, part of whatever you want to call it, is that it lives on, and that's important. And I think it's in very safe hands with where we are now, so it's exciting.
Do people know, like, when someone says Chris Trenerry, are they like Pat Riots, or is it a secret?
I'd like to think it was a secret, I guess. I don't know. So I guess people, if you said Chris Trenerry, to most people, they would sort of connect it with Foxy. But then obviously with what happened in Plymouth, with the Raiders going and Patriots arriving, very quickly we had to find a new character, and that's how Pat Riots was born. So it's I guess people would probably connect me more with the Fox than they would Pat, but it's I'm proud to have done both.
I knew you would love him.
I'm taking my time to think about questions that are, one, appropriate for the air, but two, there are just many stupid ones. But that is, I mean, take us back to the beginning then, Chris. Like, how did you stumble
mascots
into that?
are absolutely pivotal to
crucial.
the whole entertainment
So crucial.
of a basketball game.
So I mean, we have lots of people around the world. We're really grateful to have listeners: Indonesia, Japan, Americas, all over Europe. Give them, in Pat Riot's own word, and Foxy as well, just explain who the mascots were and the club, and just give us a little background for them.
Okay, so Plymouth Raiders were the team that sort of played in Plymouth since sort of early 80s, and their mascot was Foxy, and I was fortunate enough to sort of stumble across that when I was about 15 years old, and carried on doing that right until the end in 2021 when we replaced Foxy with Pat Riots.
How does that happen then? Like, how did you actually, when you were 15, was it like someone said, we need someone to jump in here? Like, how did...
No, so what happened was 96, 97 season, the Raiders used to play at a place called the Mayflower Centre in Plymouth. And that at the beginning of that season, they needed to find a new home because the Mayflower Centre didn't seat enough people to meet Division 1 or NBL Division 1 as it was then, sort of rules, legislation. It didn't hold enough people. So it looked like the club could have to sort of move down a couple of leagues or even go out of existence. And of course, at that point, the Pavilions was quite new, and they, so Keith Mollard, who was one of the directors at the time, was contacted by the Pavilions, and they said, "Look, we've got this space. We think that potentially you could hold basketball games here. Come and look." And fortunately, it worked, and you know what that did for basketball in Plymouth was massive, you know, because all of a sudden we went from playing in a sort of old leaky sports hall that had 150 seats to a theatre arena type building that you could hold 1,600 people.
And arguably one of the best atmospheres in the BBL.
Yeah, and it just lends itself perfectly to live sport, doesn't it? You know, we've got the lights, we've got the cheerleaders, we've got the mascot, we've got, you know, the team, and it just kind of just lends itself, like I say, perfectly to a brilliant family evening out. And I remember at that time I was 15, so I was playing junior basketball, and I'd go to the Mayflower Centre, and I got hooked on it there, and then got the season ticket to go to the Pavilions. And, you know, I suppose at that point, the start of that season, we were playing in front of like 150, 200 people. Kind of looks lost in a 1,600 seat arena. So, but very quickly added in, you know, the lights and the show. And by the end of that season, games were being sold out. But what happened in probably about November of that first season, they introduced a mascot, because at that time the Pavilions was part of Plymouth Theatre Royal, so they very quickly got the costume department to knock up a fox costume.
Oh really? It's like so, because normally you look for a mascot and it's like, oh, at least like 5, 6, 7, 8 grand, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And but at that point it was all in-house. They did that. I mean, the mascot for Raiders had always been a fox. And so they got the costume together, and it was made for a performer that was based at the theatre at the time. They did about half a dozen games and then sort of decided it wasn't for them. And then a friend of one of the players got in it and did half a dozen games, and again decided it wasn't for him. And at that point, one of the lads that I played junior basketball with, a guy called Rob, his dad was match day volunteer, so at Raiders, and for whatever reason, I was having a sleepover with Rob on the Saturday, and we're going to the Pavilions to watch the Raiders on the Sunday. So I rock up, and Rob's like, "Guess what?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm going to be Foxy tomorrow." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm like, the other guys like quit, so they've asked me to do it." So I was like, "Oh my God." And I remember being like really in awe that Rob was doing this, and it was just like, "Oh my God, you've got to do this and you've got to do that." So anyways, we go to the game, and you know, he gets the suit on, and he goes out and he's running around and like just doing his thing. And at half time, his dad comes to me and he's like, "You've got to do the second half." And I was like, "What?" He's like, he's got heat exhaustion. There's no way he can do the second half. So you're going to have to do it. So I was like, okay. And that was it, really. So that would have been probably like February 97. And I did it and just immediately fell in love with it. Just like enjoyed performing, enjoyed the sort of anonymity of it. Nobody knew that it was me, so I kind of had that license to get away with things that.
Well, it's a mask, isn't it? It's a mask.
Absolutely.
You become a different person.
And just had an incredible amount of fun, and kind of wasn't sure if I'd done a good job, but they said, "Oh, what are you doing next weekend? Any chance you could do it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I think we had like probably about 3 or 4 games before the end of the season, and I ended up doing all of the games up until the end of the season. The penultimate one being the playoff semi-final, which was sold out, and against Coventry Crusaders, and just getting really wrapped up in the moment, carried away. Ended up like, thought the game was over. There was like 8 seconds left. I'm on the floor. The referees had to stop the game. We won the game, fortunately, but I I remember thinking, "Oh, that's it. My Mascot career is done, because there's no way I'm going to be invited."
That makes you even better. That
Yeah.
makes you even better.
And sure, and you know, back then there was no social media, there was no mobile telephones, so I was kind of just waiting for like the nod, and sure enough, a couple of weeks before the season started, I'd come home from school, and my mum said, "Oh, Keith called from the Raiders and wants to know if you're available to do like this season."
Amazing.
And I was like, absolutely, and that was it. Just I've done it ever since, or had done it ever since. So yeah, it was brilliant.
I told you, Chris is going to be the best guest of ever.
Right,
on this
I've
show.
got my first question now,
It's
Chris.
so unique, isn't it?
It's percolated. I've got my first one.
Chris, I normally write loads. I don't want to say Chris, I want to say Pat. Pat Riots. I normally write loads of notes, but I couldn't write any notes because I knew Mark would see it, and I've been frantically writing notes. But as soon as I went Pat Riots, Mark was just like, notes, straight away. His mind just exploded.
Well, my first one is, it's going to, like, I want to say jump forward to then jump back, because I want to hear how this carried on. But when you're a Mascot for that period of time, and you know you retired from active duty, as you said a couple of seasons ago, so up until that
last season.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, I did the first game of this season, because the club, I got to a place last year, because I do a Mascot for EFL football club as well, and
I said this to Mark. I said, we're going to be talking about the championship, Mark, and he's like, who is coming on that's involved with the championship
I don't like football,
and the BBL?
Why are we talking
it's like,
about football? But
what?
Okay, there we go.
And it just got to a point last year where I was like, we'd have a BBL game Friday night, football on the Saturday, BBL Sunday, football Tuesday, and then some Wednesdays as BBL games as well. So kind of, and with my career and my family, it just got to a point where something had to give, and I kind of just got to a place where in basketball, as far as, you know, in Mascot terms, I'd sort of achieved everything that I'd set out to do. You know, I decided that it was the right time to sort of hang up the furry head as it goes, and just concentrate on my career and help out with the football.
So the Mascot for this is Plymouth. Is it Plymouth Town?
Plymouth Argyle.
Plymouth Argyle. So they're currently in the championship.
Yeah.
What's the mascot called for there? Because it's, from what I remember, it's like a person. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Pilgrim Pete.
Pilgrim Pete.
Oh, so many questions. So
Go.
You just mentioned about family.
Yeah.
You're roughly around our age, sort of the number starts with a 4.
Yeah.
So at some point, you said you started this, you know, you're 15, 16, that sort of age. At some point, you start dating.
Yeah.
At what point do you go, oh, what should we do Saturday night? It's like, can't do that Saturday night. Why is that? I'm going to dress up as a giant fox.
So I'll share a funny story, and she won't thank me for this, but I actually
We will. We absolutely will thank you for it.
Well, yeah, my wife won't though. So, so she came to a game as came to a game, my wife, and after the game, asked me for a photograph, or asked Foxy for a photograph.
Did she know it was you at that point?
No, and I didn't know who she was. So I was just doing the photos, and we've got it in our hallway actually.
Oh, that's cool.
We say that's like the first photo of us both together. And then, this is when, Facebook was in its infancy, and Messenger and all that sort of malarkey. And a friend of mine tagged me in the picture, and I get a message saying, are you the fox? And I was like, depends who's asking. And we ended up chatting, and then of course we ended up going on a few dates, and now we've been married for several years, and we've got 2 children. So but being a mascot's given me an awful lot, and a family is one of the things that as well that I've taken out of it too. So
well, it doesn't get bigger than that. Get bigger than that. But it was something else you said about reaching all the goals that you could want to achieve as a mascot.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me thinking every kid at school will be sitting there going, what do you want to be when you're older? I want to be a mascot. And what do you do? Well, I've got a goals list of things that I want to do as a mascot. I'd love to know what that list was.
No, they're not saying I want to be a mascot. They're saying I want to be Foxy, or I want to be Pat Riots.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I guess for me, like when we set out, I wanted to do like Wembley Arena. I wanted to do the NIA because that's where they filmed the Gladiators. I wanted to just do like a domestic cup final. Wasn't fussed whether that was the trophy, the cup, or even the playoff final. And I said that I'd quite like to mascot sort of in Europe as well. And then so I ended up doing every sort of BBL cup final, trophy final, playoff final from 2004 right up until 2021. And in all of those places, Wembley Arena, the O2, NIA, the Emirates in Glasgow, etc. So, and really proud to have done that. Of course, in that time, not just as Foxy or Pat Riots. We had Larry the Lion, which we introduced to the BBL.
You're Larry the Lion?
I was, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And Leroy before that.
Yeah.
And then I helped Surrey, or Guildford as it was at that point, launch Scorcher. So I did the first probably 3 or 4 games as Scorcher when he launched, just helped them out with that character development, etc. So yeah, there's again around the BBL, I'm quite proud to have sort of supported and helped.
Oh, you definitely should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've just said character development there. How does that talk us through that?
Well, I think you very much have to, you look at what do you want out of your mascot, and you can. I think with Foxy, for example, it was very much, he was sort of that, your naughty schoolboy that sort of could get away with doing things. There was always a line in Foxy's character was that he always crossed that. I think Pat Riots was very similar in how we went around that. And I guess from Surrey's point of view at the time when we launched Scorcher, it was like, okay, what do we want now? That suit's very different. Foxy, Larry, Pat Riots are sort of big bodies, quite heavy and difficult to move in, whereas Scorcher was like sort of skin tight, what's the word, lycra, and the head was very lightweight, so that lent itself perfectly to Duncan and so on and so forth off the trampoline. So his character was very almost Spider-Man-esque. He was just like very so not as naughty, but just quite cool. And so when you're getting into character, you've got to you've got to understand what the organisation wants from that. And sometimes when you go to the organisation, you say, what do you want to do? And they go, I don't know, that's up to you. And that's normally good to hear. But I think when you're developing a character or a mascot from scratch, these are the sorts of questions that you really need to answer, because else you just end up with, just somebody in a suit. And that's not beneficial to anybody, really.
And you just touched on something which everyone is thinking. How hard is it to dunk as a mascot? Because we're seeing Pat Riots dunk during the halftime show or the quarter show, and we're like, that is awesome. I like the fact his tongue's hanging out all the time.
Yeah. So what you've got to remember is all you can see is literally this. So you don't have that sort of surround vision. So I think it's one of those things that it's repetitive. You've got to practice and practice and practice some more. And then once you get used to where you've got to take off, you've got to ensure that the tramp's in the right place at all times. And then it's just about practicing. And then you know your capabilities, how far you away from the hoop you are, and so on and so forth. And you just go from there.
You had any accidents like where you?
Loads of broken bones. I've split open. I've split my arm open. I've done my patella. We had loads of injuries. Mascotting, but yeah, it's great. All adds to the story.
I suppose it's not funny at all, but the funny thing about it is if you do your patella, Pat Riots is being carried off the floor, which is what makes it funny. It's really not funny. But
no, so it was just as Foxy, and just hit the trampoline, and I knew instantly. But I suppose ever the showman, I just sort of hobbled off rather than sort of like make a big deal of it. You're always conscious that there are kids there. You don't want them to think, something's happened, because that could be quite upsetting. So it's always best just to try and get to the first aid room and just deal with it there. Actually, when I cut my elbow open with a crash mats hadn't been positioned properly, and as I came down onto them, they split open, and my elbow hit the floor. And I remember thinking, that's really quite painful. This was between the third and fourth quarters, so the game was quite close. We carry on, do the game. Afterwards, we do all the photos and what have you, and then I get back into the changing room, get undressed, and literally the whole arm is red, and there's a pretty big gash, and off we go to A&E, and that was that.
Wow.
When you come out after a game, and you sat there, you're in the locker room, and
do you have your own locker room?
Yeah,
I know the Portsmouth. So we're in the Portsmouth Force. Funny enough, this season we played Plymouth Raiders, and Foxy was there. I gotta say, for a Div 3 club, man, they got things going.
They're not a Div 3 club.
The organisation is definitely not Div 3. That's a Div 1 organisation. I forgot what I was going to say then. What was I going to say? No, it's gone.
No, it's because you just jumped in when I was asking a question. That's why.
No, I was talking about what I was going to ask.
You said I'm in the locker room. After a game, you're in the locker room.
So the Portsmouth Force have got a mascot now, and we give him his own locker room. So yeah, that's why when you said it,
But yeah, it's how, as a mascot, do you get after that game and think that was a good one as a mascot?
So it's really interesting, because I think you get to a place where, of course, it's always a good one from my point of view when the games are close. And what you've got to have the ability to do is sort of, let's take a step back. What is your job? What are you there to do? Well, first of all, you're there to entertain. but you can't detract from the basketball. Everybody's come to the, if it's at the pavilions or wherever you are, everybody, let's remember that everybody has come to watch the basketball. But what I think we did that was really successful with Foxy and the pavilions was we had this sort of ethos that we were very intent on making it attractive to families. We wanted families to come. And there, of course, you know, the parents would be really engaged in the game, but the kids would either like the cheerleaders or Foxy. And then, of course, the parents would have a giggle with Foxy and you know, be entertained by the cheerleaders. So, and I think that was also part of the success of what we had. And, you know, you can talk to, I know guys that have played professional basketball that have said to me, oh my God, how I got into basketball was watching you be a nutcase as Foxy. That really, you know, used to go just to watch you, but then I got interested in the game. And ultimately, if we can, that's what it's about. If we can engage people in that way, then that can only be good for the sport, can't it? And if that's what's going to put a few more bums on seats, then job done as far as I'm concerned.
Sorry.
Go on. No, so what? I was just going to answer the question. So what justifies a good game, or how do you sort of sit there and think, well, you had a good game? And we talk a lot. We talk a lot in the football club now about magic moments and how has anybody gone home having had a magic moment. And it's quite interesting because I think, well, that's exactly what we've done at basketball for years. It's about making people feel like they're the only one, or, you know, the kids, we get them down on the court, or, you know, I'd go and sit next to them during the game or what have you, and just make them feel important. And I think that was always the aim for me. So you sit there after the game and you think, has somebody gone home tonight having had a good experience of coming to the game tonight because of me? And I think the more people that you can give that sort of attention to, the better. So I guess after games, it would always be, right, how many people have actually gone home tonight and will either tonight or tomorrow go, oh my God, I went to the basketball and Foxy, Pat Riots, Larry, Scorcher, Leroy, whoever it may be, did this. And, oh, you've got to come to a game because he does this or he's done that. And the more people that we can get into the arena because of that, then that's job done. But that's how I would always sort of judge it. Obviously, I'd always feel better if the team did well. Because again, it's then being able to know the moments that you need to interact with the crowd to get them engaged, you know, and you hear it all the time. It's a bit of a cliche, but the sixth man. But certainly at the pavilions, it's such an intimate arena. You've got 1,600 people that are really engaged in what's going on the court, and they can make such a difference. The noise that you can generate in that arena is unbelievable. And, you know, it really can help the guys on the court. So it's them being able to read what's going on during the game. So you have to have some kind of understanding of basketball to understand, right, okay, this is where we're at. We're down by 4 or 5 and we really need to get the crowd behind it now. Now, of course, as a mascot, it's impossible. You can't do that all game because you just wouldn't have the energy to do it. But so you've got to be able to pick and choose your moments to really engage the crowd. So it's just about reading that.
That's brilliant. I love the words you said was creating magic moments for fans, and I absolutely love that. I've never heard that before, and that is actually brilliant because you do get the fans walk away and you hear them, and you hear kids say like, oh, remember when that happened with a mascot or something like that, and you think, yeah, that is exactly what you're saying. Also, I couldn't help feeling that when you said, like, how does Pat Riots think was this a good game? I like the idea of stuff from Orlando or Foxy walking in the changing room with some notes like, yes, you've had a good game. Like,
give them an evaluation.
Yeah, like they do with refs. But yeah, that's brilliant.
You've used the word "we" a lot, and within anyone who's within a basketball club or an organisation, it is a we. It's not just there's an organisation or there's just players. There are volunteers and there's a crowd and everything is participation and it's all sort of embedded. But one of the key things that we've come across quite a lot in a lot of our conversations with people is the arena. So Plymouth have announced, that they're not going to be at the pavilions next year.
Yeah.
How does that impact a club?
Oh, huge. For Plymouth, I think it's huge because it's what put Plymouth on the map. Certainly when we were playing at the Mayflower Centre in front of 150 people, 250 people, it was supported and people enjoyed going to the basketball. But by moving to the pavilions, it just took it to a whole new level and engaged the whole community, the wider community, because it was in the place where all the pop stars were playing, and then all of a sudden the basketball team were playing there. So the basketball team effectively became the pop stars. So when they were, putting out the season schedules, not just for the basketball, but they've got, Robbie Williams, Oasis, and then in amongst all of that, you can come and watch some basketball. So people that were just looking to be entertained were then saying, well, we'll give this basketball a try. And certainly at the very beginning in the sort of, late 90s, it really wasn't expensive to go and watch a game of basketball. So it really did become so ingrained in the community. And, this was back again before social media. Your local newspaper was where everybody got their sort of news and what was going on. And Plymouth really did share that back page with the football team or the rugby team. And it was really, really well supported. It genuinely was the hottest ticket in town because, it was only 1,600 people that could go. We were selling at one point sort of 600, 700, 800 season tickets a year. And we were getting sort of 200 or 300 people that would walk on match nights. And then dependent on who we were playing, it really, like I say, it genuinely was the hottest ticket. Nobody could get tickets, and there were waiting lists, etc. So, so to answer your question, what does that mean to Plymouth? I think it will absolutely make things really difficult in what has been a difficult period. We had that time sort of 3 or 4 years ago where the investors from Turkey came in and everybody believed that the Raiders were going to be the Man City of basketball, and it looked for a little while like we were going to be. And then for whatever reason, that it kind of that broke down. I'm just trying to be careful in what I say, because there were lots of people that were affected by that at that time. But the reason I give that context is because I know those people were completely invested in making Plymouth basketball better. But then obviously we had the Raiders disappeared, Patriots came in. What people may or may not be aware of, that in the background, certainly since sort of 2013, the pavilions was that sort of problem for the club because the council had sort of passed that on so it was privately owned rather than being Plymouth City Council owned. So up until that point, the basketball club was getting direct support from Plymouth City Council. When they sold it to private, the chap that took it on privately, that became a problem for the basketball club because the council had no control over what was happening. So although it was the Raiders' home, it was then owned privately, and it was then down to the basketball club and the business to negotiate what happened on match nights. And that evolved to a place, ultimately it's a business. Somebody's running it as a business, whereas the council were happy to subsidise that when they owned it. When that ownership passed on, it was a problem, and was the reason that Bob Whittaker moved on. And then when Ross McKenzie and Richard Mollard took it on, they knew that that was a headache that they had to resolve. Then when the Turkish investors came in, it looked like that, that was the problem would be solved. And then it ended sort of acrimoniously between them and the Pavilions, funnily enough. And then obviously now the Patriots, Carl came in and recognised that that was something that needed to be resolved, hasn't been able to resolve it, and sadly he's had to walk away from the club as well. So it's a really long-winded answer to your question, but I cannot emphasise enough how important the Plymouth Pavilions is to basketball in Plymouth. And I think, does it mean that basketball stops in Plymouth now that games won't be played at the Pavilions? Absolutely not. But I don't think that people will get the same experience in going elsewhere to see a game.
It looks so impressive, doesn't it? Whenever you see it, and there's some of them, I might say they all look the same, but they've got a certain structure to them, and then there's some of the newer ones, and the Pavilions is its own thing. It's just its own thing.
It's one of the more. It's not. I like the way they darken the crowd out, and all the lights are on the court.
Yeah,
and
so good.
Talking to some BBL players, talking to some ex-BBL players, they all talk about Plymouth, the Pavilion, one, as a great venue. Two, they always bring up the home fans. They always talk about the home fans as one of the best supporters in the BBL. And you know what? I think we should say, on behalf of definitely off our podcast, we hope that all the best for Plymouth moving forward, because you at the moment they're losing that great venue, that great, I want to say, atmosphere that they create. I would say after that, the third thing people mention is Pat Riots.
I think like I know the league are committed to trying to make that happen, but I don't know. Let's see. It'd be sad if basketball ended up moving out of the Pavilions.
Lovely.
Now, the reason I've done that is because Mark buggered up the meeting with Pat Riots, so we had to spend 15 minutes trying to get us back on with Pat Riots. But he's back.
I got the hamsters spinning on the wheel. They're getting the electricity moving now. Everything's fine.
But for everyone else, they're just like, hang on.
Why did they do that
They
noise?
just continued. So
everyone just thinks you want to press
Pat
that
Riots.
little button. You like that noise.
So, look, just going back to where we say, like, definitely on behalf of everyone from the podcast, we love the Plymouth City Patriots setup. We love the court.
Love it.
We love the fact that the fans are so passionate. We actually like the logos. We like the colours. We like it is actually great, and we hope they all do well and in the future, whatever happens.
100%.
Amen. I think, just to echo that, I think like Plymouth needs a BBL franchise. Plymouth needs, it needs to continue. So hopefully that can be all sorted out, rectified. Everybody finds a solution and it moves forward, and I think that's what majority of Plymouthians would want as well.
Yeah. And you know what? This is a random question. This is, but I think this makes sense because obviously you've got the football side of mascotting and the basketball side of mascotting. Now, I would think they're very different. They're very, very different roles you're playing, right?
Yeah, hugely different. And the reason for that is, sorry, was that your question? Or
Yeah. No, that's the question.
So the question is, yes, hugely different, because if you imagine in a football stadium, I was lucky enough to do Wembley Stadium last year, and there was 83,000 people in the stadium. But of course, in a basketball arena, even if we were doing the O2 and we've got sort of 13 or 14,000 people in there, because you're indoors, and it's so intimate. You can pretty much, wherever you are in the arena, people can see you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a football stadium, you almost have to do it section by section. So whatever skit it is that you're running, you have to repeat that several times as you go around the stadium. In football, whereas in basketball, like I say, you can only really do that once, because wherever you are in an arena, people can see where you are and what you're doing. So yeah, two very different gigs, received very differently by the crowds, but both enjoyable for different reasons.
Yeah, and I always think when, like, I'll go to watch Pompey play, and you see the Mascot, and I always think, because of I'm so heavily involved in basketball, I always think I could just do a little bit more, even if it was just playing around on the pitch at the start of the game or at half time, where they're looking at an opposing player like, yeah, pass me the ball, and then when they pass them the ball, they walk off, or I don't know, something. But I don't know if that's starting to evolve the football side of things too much. I don't know.
So my observation, so give you a bit of background story to this as well. So when I first started doing Foxy in the 90s, we had a director at Raiders who was also a director at Argyle. So I'd done a couple of seasons as Foxy, and he said to me, would you be interested in coming in doing Pilgrim Pete at Argyle? And I kind of, so I said, yeah, I'd love to. And I went and did a couple of seasons there. And he, I've forgotten where I was going with this.
Football and basketball.
Yeah, so.
Oh, we're just looking at Pilgrim Pete now. Just got videos of him.
So what struck me was just the difference in how you were received and what you could get away with. But then when I went back, so I stopped, and then I had a break from the football. Basically, a guy took over from me, and we had this sort of agreement that when he stopped, he'd let me know. And he did it for 20 years. So it kind of worked out all right for me, because I played local football, and then the year that I stopped playing local football, I got the call say, would you be interested in coming back to Argyle? So we did that. My first game back, so this would have been 2019. I've gone down as Pilgrim Pete to the side of the pitch. We've got some sponsors there, and one of them's a friend of mine. So I've just jumped on him, rugby tackled him to the floor, and the guy who's like managing this group of sponsors is literally having a heart failure, and he's like, what are you doing? You can't do that. These are our sponsors. And that was just sort of the birth of this sort of next phase of what we've done with the character at Argyle. But I don't think football was, and there's still, sometimes we do some stuff, and I think people sort of think, crikey, like, should he be doing that? Can you get away with it? But I think that's also part of the magic of what we're doing here with this, is that it's about those magic moments, creating them for the kids and families, and making sure that people can go home and go, we've got a really good time today, and that's just a little bit better.
And football fans don't get that same magic moment experience with a Mascot as basketball fans do. And I genuinely believe that people need to embrace change. And every time I go to a football game, that's the one thing that pops in my mind. Every single game, Mascot could be better. No matter where I go, Mascot could be better. And when you're talking about seeing your friend, he doesn't know you're there, and you're like, hey, grab him like that. That is part of that magic, I think. Yeah,
I think and that's why I suppose certainly doing what we're doing in Plymouth, it was so appealing to me, was because it allowed us to sort of start to create the character again, and really engage people, and just really put it on the map. And we've had some fantastic feedback from from the league. You know, what we may not be aware, but what they operate in the EFL is they mystery shop every single club twice a season. So pre-Christmas, post-Christmas, they then score it and combine the scores. And last year we had some really lovely feedback from the league on our mascot, on the mascot program. And again, this year, the first visit, we had some great feedback again. So I'm quite proud that we're able to gain that feedback. One of the feedbacks actually said the mascot reminds me of an NBA mascot, where, you know, sort of the element of the unknown is always there, and you just got to watch them.
Right.
And it was like, that was, you know, just for me hearing that or seeing it on that report, it was like, yeah, that's why we do what we do. We want to make sure that people go away having that experience.
Yeah.
So who are the mascots that you then, I want to say, not aspire to, but who are those mascots that you've
That
taken?
was one of my. Who's your favourite mascot of all time? That was my question. Stuff's got to be up there.
Yeah, Stuff. The one though, so there's a few, and I've been lucky enough. So the guy who plays Rocky from the Denver Nuggets, he's like the godfather at the moment, and I was lucky enough to meet him in 1998. They ran do you remember the NBA used to be shown on Channel 4, and they did like a NBA road show, and it was at Earl's Court in London, and they got Rocky to come over from the Denver Nuggets, and he did like he abseiled in out of the ceiling at Earl's Court, which was like, God knows how high that was, but I just remember seeing him come in and watching his skit and just how he interacted with the crowd, and just thinking, that's like that's the pinnacle, like, you know, to be able to do that. He had the crowd eating out of their hands, and I got introduced to him afterwards, and he was like really kind to just give me some books. At the time I was, I don't know, like 17, 18, and just said, like, you know, how do you do what you do, and he was just really good, just gave me some good pointers in just sort of crowd interaction and that sort of thing.
Wow.
And then
can I just say, I've seen him go on, I don't know how to describe this. Imagine a really, really long extended ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On top of that ladder is another extended ladder that he climbs all the way to the top to. I want to almost say he's not far off, like the Titantron above him, and he's throwing balls above his head. And there's one great clip going around at the moment where he throws it goes in, and he just like turns around, crowd go nuts, and he's like, yeah. That takes testicular fortitude, doesn't it?
Lack of fear.
to
go how high up? I mean, that's like easily 3 stories, right? 2 stories, 3 stories up.
Yeah. Oh, and some. You are just accepting. If I'm falling from this, it was a good day.
Would they have padding in that? Like, would he have padding inside? Is like, if he falls, it's like, what, you're dead, right?
If he falls, he's going to get seriously hurt. Yeah. He's going to, if he falls from, so, you know, and I think that's the thing with Mascot. People, if he falls, he's got padding. It's not. Listen, it's like a pair of jogging bottoms or with a bit of fabric. Yeah, maybe slightly thicker than your average pair of jogging bottoms, but it ain't gonna protect you or save your life if you fall from like 50 or 60 feet. Yeah. So, you know, you're right. The thing with this guy is it's the same person that's done it since the early 90s. He is an athlete. His comic timing is just perfection, and he's just got it off to a T. And believe it or not, his son is now an NBA mascot elsewhere in the league. So he's been doing it for like 30 plus years, and now his son is an NBA mascot at another franchise in the league. So
I don't know if this is a silly question, and if you know the answer and you don't want to answer, by all means don't answer. But is that a paid gig? Is that like your full-time job?
Oh my god! So those guys,
or is that a part-time?
No, it's full-time.
No. So in the NBA, like $100,000 salaries.
Oh wow!
Are not unheard of.
Wow.
And I think recently, and you can Google it, but the chap that plays Rocky is I think he's like the highest earning mascot ever. And let me just say something: he is worth every single penny. And even if they doubled his salary, he'd be still worth every single penny. He's just brilliant. And then you look at other guys like Benny the Bull, and then the Philly fanatic, Dave Raymond, who really was the original sort of character mascot that really sort of brought that sort of shock and characters to life in the 70s. Because of what those guys have done, have just allowed people like me to come along and just sort of have a go at it and just have a lot of fun. So
yeah, I mean, I remember seeing stuff. It was one of the first games I'd been to where I was watching stuff do something, and he was sat on that's a great picture.
Just show Mark a picture of Pat Riots. Look at it, this tongue hanging out. I love it.
And
that was me, because the sponsor, that was when I was still doing it. So that's definitely me.
Oh wow, there we go. It's Chris without us knowing. But I mean, the mascot, he just basically, they were on the staircase. He just tumbled down the staircase, and you think you got to be a gymnast. You can't. That's not. Normal people don't do that. that's but it's part of the atmosphere. That's. You were saying earlier about sort of you educate people when they appreciate that. Yes, there's a gameplay, but it's so much more than that. There's an atmosphere. There's not like a pantomime, but you don't have a good. If it's the home crowd or if you're a away fan, there's a whole something to it. And
and I think certainly part of the character that we developed with Foxy was almost sort of, there was that line, he'd cross it, whether that was winding up opposing players and or sort of just I suppose from my point of view, I used to just work on that. If it's about marginal gains, and if I can just put somebody off 1% or get into their head by 1%, that's going to be of benefit to the team. But of course, you've got to remain professional whilst you're doing that. But
what happens if the mascot crosses that line? Just out of interest.
So in Portsmouth, we've got a mascot, and without it is kind of a secret who it is. Some people know, some people don't. But let's put it this way: he's a young man, and I'll tell you what. No one will see this, but I'll tell you how old he is now. Okay, that's how old he is, and yeah, sometimes he doesn't know where to draw the line. So when an opposing player is taking a free throw, he'll literally go right onto the basket, right on the baseline, and be waving around. And I keep saying to him, you just can't go back a bit, go to the side or something like that. But yeah.
So I always, and I suppose still do, worked on the philosophy that if nobody's told me not to do something, that means I can do it. And until they tell me that I can't do it. So if he's right on the baseline, tell him to carry on doing that until somebody official tells him that he can.
Forgiveness over permission. Yeah.
I think the refs have told him off a little bit, but again, it's a learning experience.
You can't get a T, can you? But could you get ejected from a game?
I've been ejected from a few games. So
come on, there's some stories there, Chris. What have you done to get chucked out?
I pulled somebody's shorts down during the game.
Who? What? A player?
Yeah. So it was Raiders versus Guildford.
Oh dear!
I've done that on more than one occasion, if I'm honest with you.
Dear, we're gonna have to nick that one.
The one that you can that people will remember as the Plymouth Guildford game, 2011, and Martel McLemore. He he gets fouled, he comes off the side of the court, walks up to where I am. And he was that sort of character that, you know, bit of a pantomime villain, crowd love to hate him. So he's played to the crowd a little bit and punched or pushed Foxy in the head. What people don't realise is when that's all sort of on, it's you know, it's amplified. So if you hit the head, it just sort of all shakes. I've sort of fallen over. He stood over me. I've got up. I've pulled his shorts down. He's gone to run after me. The Guildford bench has gone crazy. The referee going, what the hell did we do? I've been ejected. The club get fined, and it's just it got turned into something. It got blown out of all proportion, in all honesty. But
I like the fact that you got an opposing player with his pants out or jockstrap or whatever it would be in those
not
days.
Ideal. But how that all got reported was that the mascot came onto the court and pulled the guy's shorts down. Listen, I wouldn't have pulled anybody's shorts down if he hadn't hit me first. So it was in retaliation. So yeah, there's that. There was a time I saw you had Colin Irish on a couple of episodes back.
Yeah.
So there's a game so this was Solent Stars. We're playing the Solent Stars. That year we were really competitive. Like it was out of us or them that were going to win the league. And we're playing at the Pavilions. Foxy's got a pair of rollerblades, and I was like Bambi on ice. I had no control over what I was doing on these rollerblades, and I end up going probably a little bit faster than I should. And their Solent are in their huddle, and I rolled over Colin Irish's foot before the game.
Oh.
And he was incredibly good about it. I mean, he could have been, but he played the game. Afterwards, I think somebody said something, and but yeah, it's just.
I've got images of like bowling almost, where you got the Solent Stars huddled together, then Pat Riots just comes in, Foxy comes in, just smashes into the skills.
At what point do you sit there and think, right, I've got this suit on, what could I do this week? I know I'm going to put on roller skates or rollerblades. That will make it interesting.
Are you having a laugh in the suit as well? Like when stuff, that must be great because you can actually laugh out loud and no one can see you. You must have a right laugh in there.
Spend most of my time just laughing at different things that we've done, or of course you've got to be respectful, and you've got to make sure that you don't sort of embarrass somebody to the extent that they will never come to a game again. So it is a fine line, but
says the man who pulled trousers down.
That's brilliant. What was the fine? How much was the fine?
I think it was about £1,000. The club paid it.
Oh bloody hell! What were they like? Were they like, Chris, you owe us £1,000, or was that was brilliant?
At the time, I was adamant. I was like, look, if this guy. If he'd done that to, I don't know, one of the guys under the basket that, were with the mops, if he'd done that to one of the guys there and pushed them, of course, and they then responded in a different way, the reaction from the league, the referees and both clubs would have been very different. But I think because he's done it to the mascot, everyone think, well, that's all right because it's a bit of fun, and absolutely it's not. It's there's a volunteer there, and so that didn't make it okay.
Is there a level of training that you or something that you have to do to prepare yourself for pre-season? I guess because being in a suit is, I'd imagine, one of the least comfortable things imaginable for that period of time.
No, if you imagine wearing a big fur onesie
I'm pretty hairy, Chris. I can imagine that.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I write. Like, how do you deal with the heat?
The heat is just it's one of those things again that you just learn to manage. You get breaks little and often. Take on as much fluid as you can, little and often. Again, it's an experience thing, and I go back to the very beginning. The Rob, my friend that did it originally, and he sort of had heat exhaustion, so I had to do the second half, was because he'd done a whole half without taking a break. Whereas probably in a half, I'll take 2 or 3 breaks, take on, plenty of fluids, and off we go.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. That is the end of this part, but do not worry, because coming soon is the second part of this episode, and it will be available soon.